Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today I want to talk about lore. Some very, very interesting lore. Year 5 Season 1, it's in its final stretch for the Division 2, and that means that on this last weekly reset, we had the final Descent comm unlock. Now, if you don't know what these are, I did a video on some of them about midway through the season. Every week since the Descent mode is unlocked, there has been a new project, which if you defeat the Nemesis once per week, you unlock one of these collectible communications that the Division 2 and the Division overall always uses to communicate lore. And I have to say, after having all 17 of them unlocked for Year 5 Season 1, these have got to be the most interesting comms of all time for the franchise. They contextualize a lot of lore that we've had all the way since the beginning of the division. They establish new relationships with pre-existing and new characters, and they lay the groundwork for all of the future story that we're going to get within the division, particularly with the DLC that we have coming at the end of year 5. I think there's some stuff being set up here that's going to pay off in that. So it's all extremely interesting. We are likely going to get more comms in season 2, I believe. That just being based on the number of times the total comms for season 1 shifted. At one point it was like 13, then 14, now it's 17. So I think there's a few more they're probably going to have in season 2. But given that we have this collection at the end of season 1, if you didn't play Descent this season, you don't have them all, or you just want to hear my thoughts on it, I want to recap and break down all 17 comms we got from Descent in year 5 season 1. And in general, just provide my analysis on how it may set up and play into the future story of the Division 2. So if you like this and you want more in-depth breakdowns on the game like these, then be sure to click that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. And let's get into this. So like I said, I'm going to recap all 17 of the comms that we got. Some of them are pretty short, some are quite long. And so what I've done here is kind of reordered them all for clarity and chronology. So I'm kind of going to lay this out in a more narrative summary versus the comm by comm breakdown that obviously the game presents it in. Keep in mind this is going to be my own interpretation and understanding of what was presented. I'm not a lore master, so if you want the full presentation of what these have to offer, then I definitely recommend you get them yourself in-game and listen to what is said. But that said, here's the recap, and then afterwards I will give some of my thoughts on what we learn. So the first important thing to note is that all of these communications happen all before the events of the Division 1, right? So we're going back potentially years in time here. I think some are likely more just a few months from the start of the Division 1, but these go back quite a bit in the Division's world and history. We're introduced to Alex and Claire Ortiz, two new very important characters. They're a married couple and the founders of the Ortiz Robotics Company. Now, they bring in Natalia Sokolova and Calvin McManus, who we know as the leader of the Black Tusk and the Secretary of Homeland Security, respectively. Alex and Claire bring them in for a sales pitch on buying into Ortiz's new technology. And while we don't quite yet know what that technology entails, Claire specifies how the data that it will provide is backed up in, quote, apocalypse-proof sites in North Dakota and Alaska. These being underground geothermal cooled bunkers. So some pretty high-tech stuff. Natalia originally declines this pitch and she wants to see some further refinements on what they're working on. Claire easily accepts this and kind of admits her skepticism over working with what she calls shadowy organizations, as she believes that the Sokolova family and their industries are not just making knee pads, as she says, which is a reference to the Sokolov concern brand set that we have in the Division 2. Cal is much more willing to get into this business partnership, however, and he gets in on the early adoption. We later get an entry about Alex and Claire discussing the early crafting of this artificial intelligence. That's right, they are basically the creators of the AI that the division is basically founded on, right? Interestingly, we learned that Anna, the one that we saw the rogues using in the Warlords of New York expansion, was the first AI that they created. And we learn that she has more personality, she offers more options when it comes to combat suggestions, and Claire even says that she passed the Turing test, which if you know what that is, that's a pretty big deal. Alex, on the other hand, thinks that operators will be more comfortable with a less human and whimsical AI, and therefore is working on the creation of Isaac, which is of course the AI that all of the Division agents have used ever since we started out in the first game. Claire stresses that Isaac will have a lessened personality, intelligence, and independence. He also has a binary morality, whereas Anna can kind of see things differently. Later on, after some of the initial meetings with Ortiz Robotics, Cal and Natalia both go to visit Trig Schneider for consultation. Now, if you don't remember, Trig was one of the targets that we faced in Season 10, so that was a cool callback. And he tells them that he thinks the tech would be beneficial for both the Black Tusk and the NSA. However, he does have worries about its security, and he wants to see the server sites in person. And there's an interesting note at the end about how he asks Natalia what her favorite shape is, and she says it is a diamond, as well as she wants to speak more with Trig, which obviously leads to him being part of the Black Tusk later on. But that first part is important because sometime later we then get confirmation that now there are 3 different AI systems that exist: Isaac, Anna, and Diamond. Alex and Claire end up discussing the possibility of merging all three AI systems into a singular unit, right? A singular interface. And it would allow whoever has control of that to access one system on the interface and use that as a backdoor into the other two systems and gain all of the data and information that they have. When they're discussing this, Claire is more willing to allow this than Alex, but they end up pitching it to Cal, and they do tell him that Natalia does not know about it. And of course, he is very interested. And his request is to have all of this available in a single watch, no brick, to be less identifiable to anybody who might be looking. And he also pitches to them about how providing this new capability could be very advantageous to other teams he says that he has in Homeland Security, which is, yeah, the Hunters. Later on, Claire ends up pitching an augmented reality simulation for testing all of this new technology they're working on, and of course that ends up being Descent that we're playing in Year 5 Season 1. She wants to know how Sleeper Division agents will actually react under real-life circumstances before handing over this AI that's going to be, present in their watch. And she says that they plan to use Black Tusk tech and troops for their combat simulations, specifically the Warhounds, and I think that's why you see so many Warhounds within the Descent rooms themselves. She creates the operator suit for Descent, the one that we wear when we're in there, and she wants to tag it onto Natalia's budget, and she pitches all of this to Natalia later on, saying that the data gained from the biometric suit while an operator is in the simulation is invaluable. Sometime later, Alex pitches Cal to the creation of the mobile Shade server, which he says allows for connection to the Shade network when either the national or global SHD network is down. Cal has shown the server in action in the simulation and he's very impressed. They also tell him that Natalia doesn't know about this either, and Claire kind of reveals that all along she's favored Cal because he's, quote, for the people, and she says there may be a time when you need to cut off Natalia's access, and she thinks the mobile Shade server could help with that, and that it is basically an insurance policy against any potential coup. Later on, Cal introduces Natalia to an analyst at the NSA, and Natalia tells that person that the Black Tusk use a system that is agnostic to the AI, not Isaac, and we know that that is Diamond. And at the conclusion of that conversation, the analyst suggests that there are some potential security risks to her global operation. There's a few more one-off comms in here. One is that Alex pitches Warhounds on two legs to Natalia, saying that they could both be more mobile and maneuverable. There's a separate one where he terminates Vivian Conley, who, yes, was the rogue agent from Warlords of New York. She was employed with Ortiz Robotics, but he terminates her from their program and also tells her that all IP that she created, both on-site and in her own housing at the site, is the property of Ortiz, so she doesn't get to keep any of it. And he asks for a watch back that she is wearing. However, she says that it was a gift from Cal, and that's kind of, pseudo confirmation about how she got into the Division program. Cal later goes back to speak with that same NSA analyst and confirms that there have been field tests with the new AI and tech in both Manhattan and South America. In South America, it allowed them to infiltrate the cartel and gain organizational infrastructure knowledge. And in Manhattan, they say there was some sort of test involved with compromising a theater, which included tourists. They say that some stayed in Manhattan, some went as far home as the UK. The analyst raises concerns over civilian privacy after monitoring, their phones off of this incident. And they confirm that one user was able to cut off their access to them by installing a security update on their phone. But basically, from whatever event happened at that theater, all the information is feeding into Isaac, updating once per day. And finally, they meet once again, and the NSA analyst stresses her concern over Gordon Amherst. Yes, the same Gordon Amherst that unleashed the green poison across the world and what started the events of the Division. She says he has gone on record talking about using viruses to curb climate change, big things like that. But Cal ultimately dismisses it and says not to worry. All right, well, that is the summation of the 17 comms, like I said, that we got from Descent in Year 5 Season 1. Obviously, a ton of info in there. I was not exaggerating at the beginning that this provided us so much clarification on old concepts, gave us more information on new concepts, and just teased a lot for the future. So I won't be able to comment on absolutely everything here, but let's go over some highlights. The big one here, I think, is the concepts about Isaac, Anna, and Diamond, that there are three AI systems. It is especially interesting that they say that Anna was the first one that was designed and that she is basically in every way superior to Isaac. And for me, it brings a lot of question about current day, Division 2 story. Where is Anna? Who was she actually intended for? How did the rogues get her? Because that's what we found out in Warlords of New York, is that she is the system that the rogue network uses. And it definitely makes me think, or at least hope, that we might get some more info on this in Season 3, where we know we're going back to New York. We're going to learn about some of the behind-the-scenes events of that expansion, and, maybe Aaron Keener has some info for us. We'll see. We learned that Diamond was the tech made for Natalia, and we talked about this in the video, like I said, we did earlier in the season, but it basically confirms that this is the shoulder tech that we see on all of the Black Tusk units. That's not just there for vanity, but it is actually the singular unit that Alex and Claire were able to condense this all down into that Natalia requested in those comms, like I said, that took place years before even the Division 1. And I could be wrong on this, but the way that the comms were laid out kind of makes it sound like Diamond might not actually be a voiced AI, but it's more of like just a combat enhancer for the troops, and it can control the robotics like Claire was pitching her. But the big thing here is that we know that season 4 of Year 5, which is coming alongside the new DLC, is titled Black Diamond. So does this all have a DLC connection? I think so. Let's talk about that more in just a second after we cover some of this other stuff. Claire's and Ortiz in general, their favoritism with McManus is super interesting, right? The fact that they gave him both the backdoor access into both of the other networks, as well as the technology of the mobile shade server. Firstly, the fact that he says in these comms that he thinks that this technology could work well when given to Homeland kind of gives an explanation for why the hunters might be so knowledgeable and that they're always one step ahead, right? If they're able to at any time tap into Isaac, Anna, and Diamond, then that explains basically everything, right? Why they're able to know so much about every organization, why they're always everywhere at all times. It would just make a lot of sense. Upon revisiting these comms for this video, I did also notice how the mobile shade server comm kind of sounds like it could have a bit of a Heartland connection. Not anything direct, but they do place heavy emphasis on how this could be super useful in rural areas of the country. And Cal even talks about, some guy out on a tractor isn't going to be carrying around this briefcase. So I don't know, maybe we'll see that tie in once Heartland releases down the line, but I thought that was interesting. But overall, the culmination of these comms puts a continual emphasis on Cal needing and having an edge over Natalia when it comes to all of this technology. Does he have a greater plan in place? Again, all of these comms took place years ago. There is so much that has happened since then that we don't fully know. And he's been absent for a long time from the current comms in the story. I think someone can correct me, but I think the last time we heard from him was in season 9, right? And that was, like I said, quite a while ago. So what has he been up to? Where is he? We don't know. I also found the one particularly interesting where he willingly lets Natalia in on his secret with the NSA analyst. At least he seems to, right? He brings her to the analyst, and the analyst says, I think there could be a big security risk with this whole deal. Maybe he is basically throwing her a red herring, and he told the NSA analyst to tell her about some other potential weakness that she then might, hyper focus on in an attempt to get her to stay off of his scent about having access to all 3 systems. And so maybe he got nervous after they both went to talk to Trig, and then Trig talked about security and then went to work for her. So maybe he thought, I need something to throw her off of the scent so that we, don't get exposed for having this huge advantage. The few cameos that we got in here were awesome, obviously with Trig and Vivian. It always helps just to contextualize the world, helps weave everything together. In one of the comms, Claire did actually mention Vikram Malik, which is very interesting because at the end of Year 5 Season 1, we got the kind of bombshell line from, I think it was either Manny or Mari, who said that he helped Natalia build the Black Tusk. We really have no idea what that means. We saw some of that back in Season 10. There were some loose, references and concepts alluding to that, but it does seem like he is going to be the prime target in Season 2, which is obviously coming up very soon. So I hope and do think that we are going to learn a lot more about that relationship there, about how he plays into this whole thing. The Warhound on 2 legs comm was also super interesting. It could very well just be a nod to the fact that that is an existing functionality that Warhounds in the game have, right? There are some pictures that have floated around over time. I'll put one up on screen about how if you catch a Warhound at the right time, it will be up on 2 legs, either interacting with a laptop, or I think you can even see it like climbing down a ladder. It is quite rare. I've never actually seen that myself in game, but it does exist. So maybe they're just paying off, some homage to that, or it is very possible that they could be teasing a new variant of an enemy type for the new DLC. Like, what if we show up to Brooklyn and all of a sudden these Warhounds are running around on 2 legs? That would be pretty insane. Again, could go either way, but found that interesting. And of course, the one that is super pertinent to the entire Division world, the fact that Cal was briefed and warned about Amherst, but he seemingly did nothing. Now, of course, it's easy to blame him in hindsight. We're like, oh, look what he ended up doing. But of course, back at the time, are you going to pursue some random scientist and doctor? Who knows? I will say that the comms put a lot of emphasis on Cal's obsession over spying on foreign entities, right? He wants the capabilities of Isaac to give to the NSA so that they can spy on the cartel, like they talked about, so that he can interface all 3 systems and spy on what Natalia is doing worldwide. So I think laying at least partial blame on him is fair, that he let a domestic threat end the world when he was so, like I said, hyper-focused on the foreign stuff. But that was definitely a super interesting comm. In conclusion, my friends, insanely interesting comms across the board. It clarified a lot of key info that we had, wondered about. Some of the stuff even for years. We wanted to know more about the AIs, and this finally gave us that. And like I said, I do think it teases some big stuff for the future. My kind of theory from right now, and again, this could change with Season 2, Season 3, is that the DLC will see a big confrontation between the SHD, Homeland, and the Black Tusk. Like I said before, these comms are from years prior. We don't know what's happened in the meantime. Cal's secret hand, you could call it, where he has access to all three systems. Does Natalia know about that? Has she learned about it over time, or does he still have it to his advantage? We don't know. If it is still a secret, then he could absolutely try and cripple Natalia, and we take advantage of that. Maybe that's the way that the Black Tusk gets compromised. Or it backfires and she has some sort of backup plan and we end up crippling Homeland. Overall, to me, it seems like the SHD and us, the division agents, seem to be stuck between these huge, opposing organizations of the Black Tusk and Homeland and whatever else Cal has under his, purview. And Brooklyn and, the DLC in general might be ground zero for where this whole conflict breaks out. And that is a very exciting prospect. And I'm hoping that heading in there, we might have some tricks up our sleeves from Aaron Keener and Anna in Season 3. They've teased a lot that that's going to be a big story season. We know we're going to learn some stuff about what happened back in Warlords of New York. So maybe that's where we get our edge heading into this big conflict. But my friends, I'm going to stop talking. Those are my thoughts and I want to hear yours. Whether you collected all 17 comms for yourself or you're hearing about it for the first time in this video, what do you think about all of the key, major, insane information that we learned this season from the Descent comms? What stuff stuck out the most to you? What theories do you have about how this ties into maybe the DLC or other future story? I want to hear it all down below. That is going to do it for me today, though, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Out.